Yes, my name is Sidney Braman. I'm a physician, previously professor at the medical school at Brown University, where I became emeritus professor. And then I went off to New York, where I was at Mount Sinai, the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and was there a number of years and left, became emeritus professor there. And currently, I am part-time teaching at the Florida Atlantic University, the Charles E. Schmidt School of Medicine in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm a pulmonologist, and I have been practicing pulmonology for all my career. And as I said, currently just doing part-time work and consultancy.
I have I am also recently retired from the MSLing industry, if you will. In fact, all of pharma and my prior career was in the hospitals where I ran clinical services. So I'm a PharmD. I'm actually a California trained PharmD from back in the day, and I also have a clinical residency from ASHP. That being said, I've spent at least 12, 15 years within the hospital institutional settings where I ran clinical services or I was a clinical pharmacist, and then I joined industry or industry joined me. Some you say we call it the dark side. It's funny, no one's on the light side anymore. Everyone's on the dark side. But to make a long story short, I've been all phases of medical affairs, as we call it now, um, from both in the field and in headquarters, both in leadership roles and field. And I always seem to gravitate back to the field because I think that's where the most rewarding piece of our roles are and where I feel we get the most. I think any MSL who does the job gets their most reward and feeling of value. And really, believe it or not, use everything you knew upstairs and around you. And we'll get into that in greater detail. And my last position was with Sanofi, Genzyme, Sanofi One Care in the in the pulmonary, actually in the respiratory and the immunology division as a senior MSL in the greater New York area. And I recently retired after 6+ years. So that being said, that's who we are today. I also have done a lot of speaking on soft skills, which is a term we use, and we'll get more into it, but what that means and why it's really important and why I have such a fervor about it.
Thanks, Howie. And it is interesting. So to have an MSL and a KOL on the this one podcast is great because it gives both perspectives. And I think a lot of people talk about this idea of how do we generate a peer-to-peer dialogue between the MSL and the KOL. So what we want to explore today in this brief dialogue is what are the core tenets of an effective interaction between the MSL and the KOL. And so I suppose, Sydney, if we go back to you, like your kind of, when were you first aware that these MSLs existed and how they differed to reps? So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it took me quite a while to understand that I was even a KOL and what that really meant. I think that we physicians are very often confronted with sales representatives, and they obviously need to explain what their product is and what is important about it. And many physicians will take the time and listen. Others will not, and I think it's a shame that there is not more interaction. Then I later learned that there was another breed from the pharmaceutical industry, and that was someone who was really a scientist and someone who could talk to me at a very different level and not talk about sales, but really talk about the science behind the product. This was very appealing. I will say this, that probably the number one thing that I anticipate when I am having a meeting with a MSL is what can I learn that I can teach? That I want to learn something new. I want to honestly have something that I can then turn around and use in a lecture, in a discussion with young medical students or young doctors, and that they will be able to impart to me that I then can impart to others. I think this is the key exciting aspect of the interaction. What can I learn?
Excellent, excellent. And so, Howie, over to you. What would you, in response to say? I mean, obviously, the big thing going into a meeting with a KOL is to be really prepared to have, if you like, those talking points. Give us a little bit of an idea of what went on in your mind and in your process for ensuring that that 20-25 minute interaction with the KOL would, be the most fruitful it could be.
Excellent point. And something I think people tend to underemphasize, even though you hear it all the time in our end of the business, preparing. Preparing is much more of a deeper approach than people think or want to. And no matter how experienced or how many years or how long you've been in the same role, position, or whatever, you're always preparing. And what that takes, let's go to the first meeting because that's going to be your most important because that could either tell all, end all, or either way, make or break. You need to learn who you're going to see. And not just credentially, which is one. We can go through a whole litany. It's credentials, positioning, influence, um, titles, awards, publications, speaking, um, what their practices, what their therapeutic areas are. And all these can be found out through various mechanisms today. They're much more sophisticated than when I started, thankfully. And I think that's the big key. And I think that when we look at that, you really need to get a sense. And get a sense too, if you ever had a chance to hear them speak, because you get a sense of who they are from a personality standpoint, what their positions may be, and just their approach to things. And I think learn that. And here's the other piece: you're not alone in this business, and it is a business, a medical business. You have salespeople. Hopefully, depending on the company and depending on the guiding principles and the guidance and what have you, each company is different. You are able to interact, and you should interact with your sales personnel because they most likely have already a relationship or not working knowledge of this individual, and there's a lot you can get from them, particularly experienced salespeople. I've always treasured that, and I think that's what it is. So what you want to do also, and the last piece, because this is, like I said, it's difficult. What is your responsibility? What is your charge orders, shall we say? What is it that either your company, your division, your product, or your portfolio is expecting? What are you looking at? Is it a new product? Is it a mature product? Is it a new study? Is it off-label potential? Is it other things? Things that you know that you are been asked to do that you must make sure you get in there within the weaves and contents of the meeting, and that's part of it too. So you need to also understand where you're going with this, and in your head or write it down, do whatever you need. Do an agenda to yourself. What is it we're planning to do? Don't forget, you're going to introduce yourself as a person, not just as this figure or this position. So it's a lot of that.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting. And I suppose, Sydney, from your perspective, you're, as Howie said, it's a business. So you're, the hours in each day are the times when you're earning money, and so therefore taking 30 minutes out to meet with an MSL is that's lost earning potential, if you like. Not that you're going to be that brutal about it, but the point is, it is a window of time that you've got to make something out of. So I suppose there's part of going into these interactions, especially for the first time when you don't know somebody, and how valuable it must be that you have in the back of your mind. is this going to be, is this going to be a useful time to me? Is that sort of what's going through your mind before you meet an MSL for the first time?
Well, several things. First, honestly, I realize that he's sizing me up or she up, and I'm going to do the same. I want to know not the background, which is important, but the legitimacy of their knowledge base, of their attitudes, and what exactly is it that they're going to be telling me. I think that is probably the first thing that I'm doing, sort of who is this person and what can I expect, and is this going to be something that's reliable? The second thing I would say is that very often a mistake is made with a industry representatives coming even to a more senior KOL, that they know all this, that I'm going to come in and they know their stuff and they know probably much of what I'm going to be talking about. And I think that is very often a problem. Very often the knowledge base of the KOL is overestimated. And I think that, and you see this in lectures of all kinds to physicians, the assumption that they know at this level. So very often I'm hoping that the MSL will, in a way, start from the beginning, give me a little bit of a background, and he or she will understand by some of my responses sort of how much I know and how much I get it. At that point, things can maybe escalate into sort of more involved areas and more intricate areas. As I said, I'm looking for something that I can learn, something that I didn't know before. And sometimes it can be about the latest research on a product or in an area of interest. Sometimes it can be about the product itself. How is it doing? Or we've had some issues, and here is some maybe side effects that we didn't realize were there earlier. And lastly, and this is an interesting thing that I don't think that most MSLs realize, that I want to know what the marketplace is like. How is this product being used? Who is using it? What are the issues of in the sales force? I'd like to know, because very often what I'm hearing is that there is maybe a resistance to its use, and I want to know why and what are they hearing, that and this in this way again, I can, in my role as an educator, can be very helpful in industry. The last thing I will say as this individual is approaching me is, and this may be a bit of a selfish thing, but I'm giving up my time and I want to know what I'm going to get besides the education. I know that there are many opportunities in industry to advance a physician's career. There are consultancies, for example. There are independent research grants that I would like to know about. There are big studies that are being done. Some of them are product studies, and some of them are non-product. They're really studies that are sponsored by industry, looking at a specific patient population. My unit may want to be part of that research. So can I have access to these aspects of industry? So these are the things that I'm thinking of as the MSL is approaching me and sitting down to introduce him or herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of detail. You both covered off a lot of detail there, and I'm just thinking the kind of micro macro thing is really sort of screaming out to me at the moment, because there's the intricacy of that detail around the disease state or the treatment or whatever it might be, but there's also this very interesting contextual element, the larger part. What is this whole health sort of context? And how much does the person know about that? So therefore, it's a big body of knowledge. And so I suppose what we look at is, this isn't just one conversation, this is a series of conversations. And so one piece of advice that I would have as a person who is an expert in the area of communication is that you only have a finite window in each of these conversations. And so therefore, to Howie's earlier point about having an agenda, the agenda needs to be not too long. It needs to be. It needs to allow a handful of points to be exhaustively explored and investigated to get the most out of it. So this meeting number one. Let's just focus on that for a little bit, because
Sure.
that's, as you say, sizing one another up. Howie, it was probably a while ago that you had your first meeting with Sydney. Is there anything
Oh, we were kids.
if we looked at this like a sporting game, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, let me first take a background. Sidney Braman, Dr. Braman is probably the quintessential perfect. This is the KOL we all wish we had. Every single one. Sidney, those are the things that we love to hear and should be. And I'm glad you're bringing that up because, excuse me, that's where we hope works, because what you said, a lot of it is sort of spurring on to be our conduit to spread the word, whether good, bad, or indifferent, about what we're doing and what this portfolio product is about. And that's what we want. And you just and the questions you ask, yes, and yes, just to get back to Marcus, and very quickly, if I could digress from that, I just wish most would like you. You know that a lot of your colleagues, we often learn about egos, attitudes, and questions and behaviors. And yes, to use something I use, we are the expert for this portfolio, this position, this area, but you have the expertise. And we always respect that. And so a lot of MSLs will go in actually intrepid, they're trepidatious, they're scared. Oh my God, I'm going into this person's office. What am I going to do? He's going to make me, or she'll make me look like a fool and I'll never come back. And do I really know this stuff? And someone like yourself just warms you up right off the bat and it just helps things flow. But let's take the other point, that other one who goes, all right, you got 5 minutes. Why are you here? And we get that too. So again, you have to boil everything down, as Marcus says, into just those points. But in doing so, someone like yourself, I'm finding out a lot about you. And all those things you brought up, you just created at least 5 to 10 years of relationship. And that's the beauty, because there's so many things that we would pick between their study, research interest, between just the landscape. I'm being so quintessentially honest about it. You want to know what your colleagues are doing because it sees you. This is what we are hoping for and hoping to do. So that being said, when you walk in, you're right, time is a factor. So the first thing is the introduction, but that's, don't go overboard, right? Tell them who you are. And I walk in as Dr. Berkowitz, and let me explain. I have a PharmD. It is real. I had a residency. I have my background. I respect. And it does create that, whether it's a real respect or not. I learned that way back when we worked with salespeople. That's how they introduced me. The point being, if someone asks what I do, I told them the truth. I always tell them. It's like, oh, I thought you were a physician. No, thank you very much. I'm not. But you see, I trained all with you and worked with you. And quintessentially, between you and I and the wall, we're trained to, we must think like you. All right. And so that's the difference. All right. So let's get back. So in that time factor, remember what you as the MSL need to do, whether it's a new product, which makes life easier in regards. If it's a new product launch, there's so many places to go. There's so many, even the basics. And you're right. That's what we're here to do mostly. But we're also here to find out what your interests are, which you did beautifully. But we as MSLs need to bring that out because that's not always going to come out right off the bat. And and don't think that there are some of your colleagues that would feel, well, I'm not sure. This one's going to try and outsmart me or show me up, right? And in my 30 plus years doing this, yes, I've had that. It's a matter of how you, the MSL, respond. And that takes a lot of doing. I know we went slightly off track here, but the first meeting is really that basics. And it should be nothing more than that in terms of general. Is this KOL even interested in our area? Does this, and you may have found stuff and you may not have. It doesn't matter. Your preparation is your preparation. Meeting the person is going to change, could change a lot of things. And that's where you as the MSL have to think things through and active listen as things are going on so you can pick up points that you can go to. And as I always said, never give away the farm, just leave breadcrumbs to come back another time.
Don't make the assumption, have the MSL make the assumption that the KOL knows a lot about what the topic is, what the discussion is going to be about. Finding out a little bit about sort of what they do know can be very helpful because otherwise the session could be lost. You don't really get a sense of what the MSL is saying. The other thing that I thought about, which may surprise you, but honestly, not all physicians, even KOLs, really know exactly the difference between a sales representative and a medical science representative.
Thank you.
It seems obvious because we're talking about it. We've been in this industry. We know, but they don't always know. And I think that it's very important that somehow when an MSL is introducing themselves, they somehow get that knowledge through that I'm not here as a sales representative. No, you don't have to say it that way, but make sure that it's clearly understood that this is a scientific exchange, not a sales pitch. And that can make all the difference in the world. And knowing that you are the doctor scientist, I want to know more about you and about what you know and about your product also.
So let's have a think about, the end of that first meeting. Like, what do you think is because I always find one thing, be it MSLs or, even frankly, commercial people as well, when it comes to finishing an interaction in a way that's decisive and clear, and that both parties understand, what's been said or agreed to. Any commentary there?
Sidney.
Well, I could say that the magic word, Marcus, you used was interaction. And essentially, the KOL has got to say that, hey, thank you for your time, but also thank you. I learned something. I appreciate the information you gave me, and hopefully the KOL is thinking the same thing. That yes, you're leaving this room, and I just found something that's useful that I didn't know before. So I think hopefully that is the culmination of this session. We both got something, and I think that's the key to success.
And you're absolutely right. I think just to dig into what you say, as an MSL, we got to remember, as MSLs, and you're right, what are we doing? What's our core fundamental? What's our core principle for being there? It's a long-term investment strategy rather than a short-term fix. So that goes back to what you're saying, differentiating us from the sales division versus us. They must do short-term. We need turnaround. We need sales. We need product moving. We're really there for a long-term investment to do just what you want. Oh, and that could be a long haul. So that's an important piece. But that also means you're not going to get everything done in the 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes, even 45 minutes if you're lucky. And you shouldn't, because that's not what it's about. What it's about, again, is setting goals, setting next meeting points. What I do, just to help an example, and these are the 4 things I like to say. As an MSL, you want to make sure you come back, and we'll then get to the point. Respect not just the KOL, but everyone that works with him or her, because everyone in that office has something to say and do and can affect your ability to come back or not. Follow up. Whatever you brought up, even if there's nothing to say, follow up. Even if it's negative, follow up, and we can spend a whole time on that. Follow through. Bring it to some sort of fruition, whether it's going to happen or not, because and value the KOL's time. What does that mean? If you get into a very deep, interesting discussion and you see that people behind or the nurse is coming in or someone's coming in, we need you to come out, da 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 da. Don't not think that that's not a sign. It's time for you, the MSL, to wrap things up. Because again, go back to respect and value. It's not just the person you're sitting next to or talking to, it's everyone around this person or persons who are involved with this person's practice or what they do. So remember that. So you always back. And I'll say, I think I've taken up enough of your time. Let's go over, and don't laugh. You're thinking the couple of things we said. And to make sure you have point for our next meeting, what I will do with the next blah, 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 could be weeks, month, whatever. I'll look at this. I'll look at the clinical trial issue. I'll let you know further. I'll have you meet with my medical director if need be. I'll get you some articles. And let's talk about when you think you want to meet again. MSL, you're not driving when you're going to meet them. MSL, you're asking when is a good time for you so you feel comfortable. What's the whole drive? You want them to want you to visit. You don't want them to feel, oh, they're here again. It's like I have to see them because already you're already closing the door. So always remember you're there at their service. They're not there for you. And I think a lot of MSLs tend to forget that because understanding the industry, they're teaching them and training them to drive, 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 and how important what they have to say. And people think, I've got the most important thing for you, Dr. Wonderful, and you should know this. And you're right, Sidney, you may or may not, but depending on how that MSL brings it out, you could close your door, psychologically on mentally, and this person, that's it. Boom. This person doesn't want to listen. And that's the other thing I remember we talked about, not listening. My God, you have to listen. And I'll leave it alone at that because if I just rambled on like I could do, um, and you had another, and you said, well, what was this all about? Then that blew it. I want you to say, I haven't heard from Howie in about 3 weeks. Let's see what's up. And I think that's the key.
And so on that next meeting setting, would that be something that the somebody in the administrative arm would do, or did you have KOLs who would actually physically set the meeting at the end of the first meeting, kind of thing? Because they, in a commercial setting, people will say at the end of the meeting, see if you can set the next meeting. It's kind of like it's an old sales trick, and frankly, in sales, it's a good one because you waste a lot of time trying to set meetings. So if you can set one at the end of the meeting, that's kind of good. But also, if people have a secretary, that's also good because then it builds up the rapport there. What did you find as a general rule in terms of setting
50-50. I found, and Sidney, you worked with a lot of your colleagues who are great with that. And in the New York area, the people I met, especially in the city, they would give me their assistant, and the assistant was more than gracious. And again, remember, folks, respect, treat that person with respect. They're the ones getting you in. And I think that, or direct, and you're right. And you're right, Marcus, if you can settle in on a date, great. But don't push it.
Yeah.
If they give you the assistant, and maybe MSL, you should ask if it looks like the KOL is sort of not sure how to approach the next meeting, or I'm not sure, I'm kind of busy. You go, do you have someone who covers your schedule? Because maybe I can work through them so I don't take away your time.
Yeah, that's
See,
right.
it's all a matter of how you approach it.
And so if the MSL says I'm going to do these 2 or 3 things as a follow up to this initial meeting that we've had, then of course Sydney, that provides a nice entree with the next meeting, right? If they come in and they've said this is what we talked about, here it is, then obviously that's a really nice way to kick off meeting 2.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember ever actually sitting down at the end of an MSL meeting and saying, okay, let's meet this date. It just,
That's true.
somehow or other, I just don't remember.
No, you and I didn't do that. No, we always worked it out.
However, I would say this, that very often a comment like, my clinic schedules are pretty light on Thursday afternoons. So if you want to consider maybe reconnecting with me maybe in a month or two on a Thursday afternoon, let me know. I never had a secretary, at least in New York, that made my schedule. I made my own schedule. So how do you want me to connect with you? Email or text or no, send me an email. So that's the way that I would do it. And they would maybe suggest a date. And I say, no, that doesn't look good. How about the following week? And we usually would do it that way. But at the end of a set, even a repeat session, so and somebody I knew well, it would not, okay, let's get out the calendars and make a date. Just didn't do it that way.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Nor should it be the MSL's expectation, to be honest with you. You're absolutely right. You're lucky if you do. And let's go back. Let's take it out of the academic institutional setting to maybe the private practice setting, where that may be more the way it would work. So you're right. And again, the MSL has to be very flexible.
And so coming into the second meeting, we've made a good impression the first time around, and we have our introduction to the second meeting set up, which was to provide you with, immediately, I'm imagining, as the KOL, person comes in and says, this is what we talked about at the end of the last meeting, this is what I've got. Now that's going to build rapport, I would have thought, straight off the bat.
Absolutely. I think that very often at the end of a meeting, I'll have a MSL say, let me look into that for you, or let me find out the answer to that for you. Or, yeah, I know there's some research that's coming out from the company. I don't think it's out yet, but let me look into this. So there's always a something next, and that's the introduction to the next meeting. Look, I just found out this information that you were asking about.
And also, you've turned a negative into a positive, because it could be that the MSL doesn't know the answer to something, and they've then been able to go, well, hang on, and I think that kind of honesty and transparency is also disarming as well. It raises an interesting point on status for me, because I feel like this is a very interesting topic. The idea of, how do we talk peer to peer, but how do we see this sort of really, really fruitful, useful rapport between the MSL and KOL? They're not entirely peers, because the KOL's, if you like, a little more senior than the MSL. But on the other hand, if the MSL can, in a professional manner, challenge, some of the thinking of the KOL, then that's got to be a positive thing as well. I would have thought, a really fruitful interaction between MSL and KOL must have, the odd objection that is raised and kind of thrashed through.
So how do you handle the objection handling? Well, I wish the MSLs, by day, we were all trained as salespeople that way, so we knew how to handle it. You have to acknowledge it and talk it through. I mean, there's some very honest reasoning behind it. And then I think the MSL should not expect that the person on the other side, regardless, is going to take what you say as, wow, that's fantastic. I thought it was different, especially since you may have been doing this for 30 years and see different things. You have every right to contest, because that's the exchange of ideas. So that's the exchange of knowledge. And when one has that fruitful interaction, and it's okay, in the end, when you both come to some sort of agreement, you just solidified things even further, and it helps augment the learning process on both ends. So I think, what you want to do is you're not going to say no unless you have data to support that might have been a misconception, a misinformation. And look, clinical medicine, it's an art and science. It still is. I learned that way. I've used that. Nothing is absolute. Well, certain things, we won't bring it up here, but nothing is absolute that way. So there may be, and I have come into those situations where the KOL, as esteemed he or she are, and I respect them tremendously, may have said something. Well, not necessarily. First thing you don't do is countermand. All right. You're right. You peer to peer. You're the expert in your area. They have the expertise. Let's not forget that. Don't countermand. This is not a challenge game. This is not a debate. Because again, remember, MSL, you're not there because they say you must be there. It's not your right to be there. You're forming a valuable service, an invaluable service to those KOLs who see that. You're bridging and everything you're creating. But just remember that you can be thrown out and not seen again, and that could create a stain on the product and the company. And don't think that doesn't happen. It does. So the reality is you have to sort of play. If let's say something was said and I said, well, actually, we have data that might show something different. Do you want me to get that to you? And we can discuss it further. Because that data may in itself be correct or maybe convoluted and we need to learn something. And believe me, that happens where someone will say, well, if you look at your study analysis, I could see why that came up. You really need to bring that back. And as an MSL, you shouldn't slide under. You should go back to your people and say, Dr. So-and-so said this, and I think they're right. Take another look. And that creates even another layer of potential workability where maybe the medical director or the research person wants to come in. Let me talk to them. Let me see what they think. So everything could sprout into something better. You're cultivating. Not everything's going to grow, but you're cultivating. So you move on to the next. And again, I said, follow through doesn't mean you're going to, and follow up doesn't mean you're going to have the right answer or going to be able to take care of it. It could be a negative. It could be a no. It could be a dead end. But you as the MSL must bring that up. You cannot just let it go away. Do not, and I'll repeat this because Sidney, not only you, but so many of your multitudes say this. The one thing the KOLs really bugged about, and as their pet peeve, if you will, is when the MSL ghosts them.
There is respect on both sides. There is, I need more data on this. The KOL will probably appreciate the fact that he may have been misled from certain data or just have a misunderstanding of the data or never really read the articles that the MSL is presenting. But occasionally there is that delicate dance that the MSL doesn't want to offend, doesn't want to make the KOL look bad because he or she said something that probably is not correct. And then I think that Howie's advice how to handle this delicately, bringing maybe articles, gee, let me look into this. I thought something else, but let me look into this, as if maybe they're wrong. That I'll find some information, and then the follow through is great. It could even be just in an email.
Now, one thing that we haven't discussed yet, and we'll just cover in the final few minutes, is these kind of guiding ideas of purpose, these principles that I think really, I believe, are mostly unseen but very much embodied. Howie, you've written a lot on this. You might want to start. Integrity, obviously passion for the area, trust. As you say, you can't walk around talking about these things. We must demonstrate them, by our actions. What are your thoughts there?
Incredibly important. You're so right. And yeah, I've done a lot of presentations, and the more I looked at it too, and emotional intelligence comes into this. And I, being a natural cynic, because I also question things too, that's how I learn. Um, you have to realize that still is important. What does that mean? That means knowing you yourself. What are your limitations? What do you come in with? Are you adaptive to behavior differences? Do you only respond behaviorally if it's yours? From the MSL. You need to break away from that. You need to understand that everyone has different behavior patterns, reasons for being. And in those meetings, you should be in there with the KOL, understanding that. What drives them? What is their passion? Yeah, I know. I've been told the one thing when everyone says, Howard, you're passionate. Well, part of what I've done over my years, if I got into a company or if I went into a product, I was passionate about what it had, what it offered, and really believed in the science and the clinical utility. So, being said, it helps you if you really believe in what you're saying, just as a clinician would be the same in a KOL. So, understand that. But again, what's integrity? Integrity is those four things again: Respect, follow up, follow through, value of time. That shows you our integrity. You show respect to them. All right. Trust. It's part of a foundation of strong interpersonal relationships. It goes back to that because it's a combination now of what you know, your knowledge base, because that does build credibility. You got to know your interpersonal behaviors and your self-awareness. So here's your emotional intelligence along with the knowledge. They both have to get together. And believe it or not, it's not a natural phenomenon a lot of times. It's a learned thing, or you learn to understand how to do it. And a lot of it could be just you learn the hard way when you get dinged by KOLs, and we'll have another time we should spend on those times. Because, yes, folks, I never had a perfect 30 some odd years. It does go around, but you learn, and that's the key too. Learn from the past both ways, right? So basically, trust will fall into two major areas, right? It's going to be the expertise and knowledge, the credibility, reliability, and responsiveness, but the emotional intelligence, the soft skills. You're open, you're empathetic, you're adaptable, you're working so you can open the door to have that discussion with that person based on their desires, moves, motivations, and what have you. And you will get that sense. We could spend another time and you walk into an office or here. How do you read the person? Right? Sidney did it very looked at my signs. Ah, you're into Dylan, right? Don't laugh. That is a discussion point you could have that creates a relationship point. You're trying to build points where there's a commonality, that there's something that you all can relate to.
Sydney, what are your reflections on these ideas?
My reflections are that Howie Berkowitz has had many, many, many years of experience, and he's obviously summarized it well. He knows what it takes to be a great MSL. I think that I know what it takes to be a great KOL. It means to be a good listener and good learner, and be and sort of imbibe the passion that the MSL is expressing, because obviously there's a lot to learn in this business.
And indeed, I suppose a lot of these characteristics are, to Howie's point, there's a lot of sort of self-awareness in this, isn't there? And building and improving in terms of those, that kind of professionalism. I mean, professionalism is quite a dry word, but when you load all the other stuff into it about integrity and scientific credibility and all these other respect, it's really quite a full. The expectation of the KOL is naturally quite high of the MSL. And I think this is and this is why sometimes I'm surprised by the level of rigor on these programs. Here we are saying this is what we expect of the MSL, and it's like really it's a very high bar. Yes. And then a lot of the time I see and I ask these organisations, well, what are you doing to help them on their learning journey to get from where they are now from where you want them to be? And it's kind of like, well, a lot of it's kind of up to them. And I'm thinking, well, I'd say they've really got to be mentored, they've got to be coached, they've got to be supported, and they've got to be able to reflect with somebody, a peer, somebody more senior than them, on what's working and what's not working.
I have to, if I could just point. Sidney, thank you. But it's KOLs like you that make it in my life that much better. And let me explain, really. It's silly, but I am not a KOL groupie. I absorb knowledge, intellect, and the science and the true medical experts, okay? And you are one of them. And it just helps us to feel that much more ability to do the respect to back because I learn from you as well all the time. And the fact that you're so willing and able, it just makes you everyone a better person. And more importantly, it drives home the point of what this is all about, without getting into the politics with that, why we need people such as yourself and the medical experts out there who really understand the landscape and the needs of the people and the medicines and the therapies, etc. As a good MSL, I should have a knowledge base, and I do, maybe more than some than others. But the point being is I'm just there as your conduit. I'm there as your, I call it a bridge. It's a two-way street. It's back and forth. It's the GW Bridge, and underneath the Martha Washington, right? Because it goes both ways and it's full traffic, never stops. And that's the thing I want to bring in and out to make sure things move, flow. And that's what it's all about. And people don't realize, and you're right, Marcus, the one thing about my industry is they get too caught up in the dogma and the rigidity of which the um, the information must be given or the charges are done regardless of the human interaction. And I think that's where they miss a lot today in the leadership circles. And I'm sorry if they hear it, but my own company would always hear it from me. I never held back. And you have to understand that. Because I learned from the best too. I could go back to my days of worshiping certain kings of hospital pharmacy. I did a residency with one. So you see what I'm saying? You learn so much because there's so much more to everything than we think. And it's the same thing with the KOLs. And they're human. We're all human. That's the beauty of it. We're not just stick figures.
As Howard was speaking, I was thinking about how much the MSL group in this country can really benefit from the comments that we brought out today. But I was also thinking, sadly enough, we're not going to be able to do this, but how much the KOLs would learn from this interaction today. And getting to them, I think, would be a gigantic task. But how it does work. The bridge does go both ways, and I think education is probably needed on both sides of the bridge.